Like, chastity is not about waiting to love your girlfriend for when you get married. It's about loving her perfectly tonight. The longer the couples waited to have sex, especially if they waited until after marriage, they had better communication, better sexual quality, a greater relationship satisfaction, and a more perceived stability in that relationship. I'm gonna offer this up for her. That love is the only thing that is gonna be able to overpower the lust that may be residing in our hearts. So you see that purity is not about dousing and killing your passions as a man, it's about setting them ablaze. We are quite ready to take or conquer in terms of enjoyment, profit, gain, and success. Then comes the question of giving, and at this point we hang back because we are not prepared to give. And he says, this is the result of the fact that we men do not have a deep enough interior life. Our interior lives are defective and lacking in depth. I think this is partly why young people love John Paul II so much. He just said it as it was. And as he was passing away in the Vatican, he said to the young people singing to him below, he said, I have looked for you, and now you have come to me, and I thank you. And we come to him because he speaks the truth. We do struggle with this. We're afraid just to give and commit. The temptation as a man is to buy into false freedom with relationships. Oh, you don't want to get all tied down, get all married, all ball and chain. And then when you have the kids, well, you don't have too many kids. I mean, when my wife and I were expecting our first girl, we'd already had 2 boys. People started saying, well, you've got your girl, so like you're done, right? Like, yes, I can stop collecting. I have the entire set of genders right now. And like, what are you even talking about? There's this fear of fatherhood. Spoke a bunch of high school guys. I said, hey, what's the #1 sexually transmitted disease? One guy's like, ooh, I know, pregnancy. I'm like, no. I'm like, kids are not bacteria, but there's this fear of fatherhood. But listen, just listen to what John Paul the Great says. He said, God, to the men he said this, God, who is Father, who is Creator, planted a reflection of his creative strength and power within man. And we should sing hymns of praise to God, the Creator, for this reflection of himself in us, and not only in our souls, but also in our bodies. That God has stamped into the body of a man the calling of a man. Look at a man's body. You see strength there. Yeah, you see it, but you also see a man's body. He is the initiator of life-giving love. It is stamped in his anatomy. And if you guys are thinking about, is he really talking about that? Yes, that is what I'm talking about. It is stamped into your anatomy to be the initiator of life-giving love. And so we ought to do this. I remember in college, best homily I ever heard. Priest got up there, and there's about this many college students, well over 1,000. And he said, okay, girls, raise your hand if you were asked out on a date this week by one of the college boys here. As would be the case on most college campuses, very few girls put their hands up. And the priest spent the rest of the homily drilling into the guys for failing to initiate love. And you should have seen the girls. They were like, hallelujah, Father. Preach on, Can I have a witness? Yeah. And I'm telling you, those girls were in love with Father Ron from that day on. But I'll tell you, we loved him more because he just said it how it was. And you'll see this calling even coming up in culture. There's beer commercials on TV. Dos Equis beer. I'm sure you've seen them, the most interesting man in the world. And they're great, lovely commercials. And I know not all of you are of age to drink, so I don't want to contribute to the delinquency of minors, but it's a really good beer commercial. And in this, there's this guy, and he's this bearded Spaniard guy with a gnarly voice, and he's always sitting with a bunch of just gorgeous women who are young enough to be his granddaughters. It's kind of creepy if you ask me, and he's always giving these sage proverbs, stay thirsty, my friends, things like that. And in this one, he's sitting there, and all he says is, it doesn't take 2 people to talk to 1 woman. I'm like, I like it. Go, initiate. I read a priest who said this. He said, a man should act decisively. Don't be an indecisive wimp hoping for an apparition. Trust in God and pop the question. And if we don't, if we're passive as a man, we're just entirely out of place. Because a man is not called to be passive. He's not called to be at leisure. You'll see women often depicted in art at leisure. She's sitting there. She's just got a bowl of fruit. That's great, man. It's you. That's fruit. That's wonderful. And you got a little blanket. That's great. You don't have art like this of men. You don't have a guy sitting there with a little blanket on him. He's just got fruit. He's like, hey, it's my avocados. I have kiwis too. It's like, dude, you're creeping me out, man. If there is nude art of men typically, and they're not doing much, yeah, there's some. David, he's not wearing anything, but he's got the sling over his shoulder. Where's Goliath? Show me the giant. He's ready to go. And you'll see this in modern art today, if you can call it art. You go to the mall, they have calendars of all kinds of stuff. And some of the calendars have these women in bikinis draped over the hoods of Lamborghinis and Ferraris. None of the calendars have some man in his underwear draped over the hood of some car. What would you do if you saw a man in his underwear on the hood of a car? Well, I would be like, dude, get off, you're gonna dent it. It's like, put a shirt on, change the oil, and get a job, okay? And so there's this, the fact is that, we're not called to just be, we're called to go do. And some people say, well, isn't that kind of sexist that the woman should just be and the man has to do? A man has power in what he does. A woman has power in who she is. And if we lose sight of this, if we lose sight of this and the man becomes too passive and the woman becomes too aggressive, the whole culture becomes unbalanced. That's why John Paul II said, the dignity and the balance of human life at every time in all generations depends upon who man will be for woman and who woman will be for man. And so we've got to initiate this because no girl in here has ever dreamt about serenading a man. But you've got all these magazines like Cosmo saying, no, you should initiate the love. You should give him the first kiss. You should make the first move. This is miraculously stupid advice because where is this gonna end? Are you gonna propose to him too? I wanna go to that wedding. What are you gonna sing? Here comes the groom, and the doors are gonna swing open. Here comes this little passive man walking down the aisle. This is just simply, and people say, well, Jason, you're gender stereotyping. You are darn right I am, and I love it. Because the fact is, what? God made us different. It's beautiful. You want proof? Watch this. Everybody look at your fingernails right now. Go. Look at your fingernails. Everybody look at your fingernails. The vast majority of girls typically will go like this. They think they got some 4-carat ring going on there, okay? The vast majority of guys go like this. They look like they're about to eat one of them, okay? Oh, there's some barbecue sauce on that one still. And if you looked at it the wrong way, you're perfectly fine. But the fact is that, we're simply different. And so let's break it down. What's the call of the man? Initiate love. Commit to your beloved. Create life with her and sustain the life that you have created. This is not just being a husband. This is the priesthood of the Catholic Church. I initiate love to the church. I will commit to her. I will lay down my life with my nose on the altar at the day of my ordination, giving up my life that the church might have life and sustaining this life until the day I die, burning out my life like a sanctuary candle on the altar, burning until there's nothing left. Total gift of life-giving love. It's the call of the priest. It's the call of the husband. It is the call of every vocation of every single man. And when people say to me, well, doesn't the Catholic Church kind of just restrict your freedom and doing stuff? In a sense, it's true. Look at what the banks of a river do. Do they restrict the freedom of the water? In a certain sense, but what does that do to that water? It gives it power. Now it's a raging river. When the levees or the dams break, you have Hurricane Katrina and the flooding in Louisiana. When the boundaries are broken, you have a stagnant swamp, which creates nothing. The Grand Canyon was not formed and carved out of the earth by a stagnant swamp, but by a narrowly hemmed-in raging river. And so it's the same thing with our masculinity. When the dams break and the sexual boundaries are lost, we think we're free, but we're slaves to our weaknesses. And I don't commit. I'm not initiating love. I'm just initiating lust, or I'm initiating nothing. Or even worse, I'm initiating lust through pornography while not initiating love to anybody. And so you see what happens as a culture, instead of initiating love, I'm just some player. Instead of committing, it's, hey, hooking up and friends with benefits. Instead of giving the gift of life, I'm scared to death of real fatherhood. And if I do get a girl pregnant, well, either I talk her into it and have an abortion, or I'm just some deadbeat dad that never shows up. You see what happens when the dams break away. And we're not, and this isn't, in a sense, it restricts our freedom, but John Paul II said freedom exists for the sake of love. It exists to be given away. G.K. Chesterton had this wonderful quote. He said, "And the more I considered Christianity, the more I found that while it had established a rule and order, the chief aim of that order was to give room for good things to run wild." And I'll tell you, as a married man, my wife and I, Kristalina, we have 5 good things running wild at home. Their names are John, Paul, Colby, Mary, and Michael, and Angelica. And so this fruit of this life of trusting the authority of the church brings forth life, brings forth authentic love and freedom. But if it's a guy's struggle to initiate, to love and to commit and all that stuff, what is the woman's struggle? I mean, I'm not a woman, but what I would guess is for many of them, it's a fear of being alone, of being unwanted, of not being desired, of thinking, well, you're not really enough to be worth pursuing. And when a girl begins to doubt herself in that way, something follows. A lot of times she'll think, well, maybe the girls in the dorm are right. I just need to just loosen up a little bit, not be so uptight and expect there's some Mr. Perfect out there for me. Maybe she begins to be a little more immodest. And then after that, I think what follows is, she lowers her standards a bit, and typically what follows is disappointment. After disappointment, it's justification. Well, I know I'm doing this, but at least I'm not doing that. Met a teenage girl, she told me, a high school girl, she said, "Jason, I've slept with 22 guys, but she said, I'm not as bad as my friend. She has slept with 67 different guys. So I'm not that bad because I'm not her." And you always think, well, it's not like I'm being that bad, but we're not doing anything that good either. We get so busy looking at what we're not doing that we hardly recognize what we are doing. And after justifying, a lot of times there's this despair. A young woman emailed me, and she was in this state. And the quote that she said to me in her email, it just broke my heart. She said here, "I feel like the gross stuff in the road after the snow has kind of melted and cars have been driving on it for a while. This despair is followed by resignation." Well, I guess this is the way it is. I mean, I'm not some naive little 12-year-old girl thinking love is perfect. And they settle and they resign. And the last step is just numbness. Or you have girls saying, look, I can hook up. I don't get all emotionally destroyed. I'm sexually liberated. I can be detached, my body from my heart. I'm a mature woman like that. In fact, 17 magazine actually said that you will know you are ready to sleep with the boy when you know you're mature enough to handle the fact that he might leave you afterwards. Then you're ready. Like, you're telling me I'm not ready for sexual intimacy with my bride, but a prostitute is ready for it because she's content with a man leaving afterwards? This is the distortion, again, of human love. And when we get to this point in a woman's heart, there's a numbness there. If I get a 1st-degree burn, yeah, it hurts, it's red. 2nd-degree burn, there's blistering and swelling. 3rd-degree burn, the skin is black, it's charred, the nerve endings are dead. If I were to put a needle in, you wouldn't feel a thing. This is the hearts of so many young women today who think, well, hey, it's not a big deal if I just hook up with a guy with a party. It's not some big deal. I'm not going to, get all emotionally distraught over it. But what ends up happening is she doesn't know how to turn back from this. She might have no boundaries around her body, but I'm telling you, there is an impenetrable wall around that girl's heart because she doesn't want to get hurt. Maybe she offers the men that which they're least likely to reject. She's hiding behind her own body because she's afraid if they really knew me, they wouldn't want me. So I'll just give them what they want, and at least I'll feel wanted for something. But she knows in the depths of her heart that this isn't what she wants. So how does she get back? Because what she's fallen prey to is being aggressive with guys, not expecting a lot of commitment. She's afraid of her own fertility. If she does get pregnant, she might reject that life within her. But if you flip this upside down, you have the rediscovery of femininity itself. Not aggressiveness, not being passive, rather active receptivity. The very disposition of the woman's body in the sexual act is not passive, it is actively receptive. She actively receives the love. She should expect commitment. She should welcome life in her and then nurture the life that has given to her. And so it's an aversion of the fall of woman. And Mary obviously is the perfect example of this. And sometimes when women have been through all this, like, Jason, how do I even get there from here? My wife told me, she said, you know what happens to girls, Jason? And she said, Jason, girls, they stuff their stuff. She said, stuff happens to girls. She said, real, serious stuff happens to girls. And she says, do you know what they do with it? They just stuff it, put their makeup on, hair looks perfect, they got cute jeans, nice shoes, I got it under control, but there's stuff in there that isn't getting healed because an unwept wound is an unhealed wound. And my wife says you must face it, you must own it, and you must heal it. And my wife is very outspoken from living a wild and crazy life and breaking her, her heart and her soul through that. And just one day discovering this is not what I want. These guys aren't spending time with me. They want to just spend time with my body. This is not what I want. She turned her life around. And now she's very outspoken. She launched a whole website called womenmadenew.com, womenmadenew.com, on how you can face it, you can own it, and heal it. To use these single years of your life that you have, these precious single years, to dedicate yourself to that healing process and trust that God can make all things new, to trust in him. He answers your prayers. I promise he does. He'll finish the good work he started in you. He answers prayers. Prove it. I was in New Zealand. There was a convent of nuns there who they wanted to do a Christmas play. Now, one of the sisters was rather extravagant. She wanted real baby Jesus, real donkey, real hay, real Mary, real everything. And the sister said, that's great, but they said, where are we going to get a donkey from? We're in New Zealand. There's no native land mammals in the country. And she said, well, St. Joseph, he had to find a donkey for Joseph and Mary. He'll find a donkey, Jesus and Mary, he'll find a donkey for us. Logical enough. So they did a novena to St. Joseph. And they all took a paper. They drew a picture of a donkey. And they said, put it under your pillow. So when you pray at night, you'll touch the paper. You'll remember to ask for a donkey. You wake up, touch the paper, you remember to pray for a donkey. So they did this 9 days or so. Strange gentleman shows up at the convent with a donkey. Oh, praise God, it's a donkey. They looked at the donkey. The donkey had no tail, nothing. Just flat little rump, no tail whatsoever. And they say, can't be disappointed, a donkey's a donkey. And the sister said, wait a minute, girls, go get your drawings. All the nuns pulled out their different drawings they had made, and every single nun forgot to draw a tail upon her donkey. So the moral of the story is when you ask God for something, it helps to be specific. So be very specific. Tell him your fears. Because if you look as a man or woman, the fears we've covered, fear of commitment, fear of expecting more because I'm going to be alone if I do, where do these fears collide? Hooking up on a college campus, where the man's not committing, the girl's not even expecting it. She might think this is a prelude to a relationship, but it's just a pacifier for one. And what ends up happening, this isn't just a momentary indiscretion, I had too many beers. This is missing the entire point of human existence, to love in the very image and likeness of God. Because if we do not love in that way, this I think is why so much alcohol is consumed beforehand and so much sadness follows afterwards, but it's not the call of love we've been given. So what's the standard that we're supposed to be living by? 2 days ago at the conference, if you listen to the readings at Mass, 1 John chapter 3, for all of us who have this hope in heaven, purify ourselves as he is pure. John is actually saying the standard is that you would be pure as the Heavenly Father. And he goes on and he says, we do what pleases him. Look at the mentality shift here. It's not about, some people live like, well, I don't want to offend anybody. Some people graduate from that. Well, I don't want to offend God. We have to graduate from that. I want to live in a way that glorifies God. I want the way I express affection to my girlfriend to bring a smile to the face of Jesus Christ. I want to bring him joy in the way that I love her, to get out of the way so that Christ himself can love her perfectly through me. It's John 3:30. I must decrease, he must increase. It's not about God standing between you. It's about God, through his graces, emptying us out so he can most perfectly love our beloved through us. And if you hear this and you think, but that's all great theology, but look, I'm not there, man. I made some serious mistakes. First, just go to confession. And I know many of you, thousands have already been, but what I would recommend, go often, at least once a month to the sacrament of reconciliation. And don't just go to confession, have a great confession. Best confession I ever had, I messed up big time. 20 years ago, went to confession. The priest was visiting from France. And I thought, sweet, I'll never see him again. This is perfect. It was a bad attitude, but it's where I was at. And so I kind of just spill the beans and I say everything. And so this priest from France, he says to me, Jason, he says, for your penance, he says, I want you to tell Jesus that he has a problem. I'm like, what? And he said, I want you to tell Jesus that he has a problem. I go, you want me to tell Jesus that he has a problem? And he's like, oui, yes. And I'm like, but I don't understand. And he said, well, you belong to Jesus, no? And I said, yeah, I belong to Jesus. And he says, well, Jesus has you. You are a big mess. He has a problem. He has you. And I'm like, So what a beautiful way to look at our sins, not to take yourself so seriously. St. Francis de Sales said, have patience with the whole world, but first of all with yourself. Go often to confession, at least once a month. Stay close to the Eucharist. Do you know the average American, cringes even to say this, spends 12 years of his life watching television? Could you imagine if we spent a decade of our life in Eucharistic adoration? How different our deathbed experience would be, how different the world would be if our lives were that contemplative. And so to realize our busyness sometimes is a sign of spiritual laziness. Because I want to be so productive, I'm not even being fruitful because I'm not that closely adhered to the vine of Christ. John Paul II, I knew a priest who was good friends with him. I said, hey, how often would Pope John Paul II visit the Blessed Sacrament during his normal day? And the priest said about 20 times. In and out to the Blessed Sacrament. I understand that when he would have papal pilgrimages where he would go, the people organizing the pilgrimage would actually have to reroute where he was going away from Eucharistic chapels. Because if he found one, he would go in it and he would get lost. He would be in there for an hour, lost in prayer. And then he'd just walk out. Okay, where are we going now? And I'm like, well, you just missed the banquet with the president, so what are we going to do? So they would actually avoid him. In Baltimore, they did this. They put up a bunch of chairs in front of the door. Yeah, it was at the bishop's residence. They put up a bunch of chairs in front of the door. And they had people standing in front of the chair, hiding the door to the chapel. And he's walking by, and he stopped. He said, chapel? Yes, Holy Father. He parts them. He goes in there. He's gone for an hour. And so, And when you're in prayer, just remember the fruit of prayer is most often not experienced in prayer. A lot of times you just sit and wait. Okay, what's my answer? Is it happening now? What's going on? The fruit of prayer often isn't experienced in prayer, but in the rest of your life if you're persevering in that prayer. So continue to deepen your interior life. And to help you walk out of here and live this out, we've created resources, not only to form your heart and your mind, but also your soul. We created a prayer book just called Pure Faith. Morning prayer, evening prayer, prayers for your studies to help you to deepen the interior life. We brought a bunch of CDs for you, and the deal with these things is that what we want to do is we just want to get the word out. And so we made 5 different CDs of my wife giving her testimony, chastity talk, today's talk. There's one on contraception. The deal with these is if you buy one, you can burn as many of them as you want. We want you, just get one for your school and then just burn it all over the place. If you get in debates in your dorm about contraception, we'll just get the green CD, burn it and pass it around. And so we're not looking to keep the rights and make a buck off of this. Just get the word out there. And so we've got the different CDs that are out there. If you know a guy or girl who's struggling, just pass on a CD. They might be more receptive than perhaps through a conversation. Different books we brought. There's Purity 365. It's a different quote for every day of the year to give you a little kick in the pants to help you to stay on track. This one is called Theology of His Body and Her Body. I put the books together because I figured a guy would rather read about a girl's body than his own anyway, so might as well stick those together. And there's a CD called Pure of Heart on how to break free from pornography. So if you struggle with that, go to the table and say, I need this for a friend of mine. And so you can get one of those. And then we also made, my wife and I for 5 years worked on a book called How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul. Oh, you've already got one. So, and the deal with this thing is we've been working for 5 years to create a book just for the girls on how to navigate through the single years of life. How many of you already have this book? So, wow, look at that. So we'll buy another one for a friend. And some people, where's the book for guys? I'm like, guys don't read, okay? So we have books for guys. They're 30 pages, larger print, have pictures, so bring crayons. But this one, just beat on the fellas. And the deal with this one is there's a little coupon card thing in it, and you can get one here, and then there's a coupon in there for where you can get them in bulk for as little as $2 a piece to evangelize the young women on your campus, to spread the message of purity and how to live out this lifestyle. So the resources out there. We also have our business card, which has our Facebook, our Twitter, our YouTube account. We have over 400 videos on YouTube you can watch and pass on and spread. My wife's website, Women Made New, all the stuff is here. Our Facebook will be announcing in the next month and a half some big news in our ministry that we're running, a brand new website we're launching, and all the details are going to be there. So all that stuff is there on the way out if you want it, and I'll be there to chat as well. But wrapping up, look at what we covered here. If the man should initiate love, commit to what he's made, all that stuff, and the woman actively receive, do you know what happens when a man and a woman do this? They reveal the very love of God to the world. Because what has Christ done? He initiated love. He first loved us. We're the ones who receive that love. Then he says that I will commit to you. I will be with you to the end of the age. And we say, Jesus, I trust in you in that. And then he gives us life through the Eucharist, sustains that life. We receive that life. The point is, if a man and a woman love each other as they ought to love each other, they become a visible image of Christ's love for the very church. This is why St. Paul said that when a husband leaves his father and mother, cleaves to his wife, the two of them become one flesh. It's a great mystery in reference to Christ and the church. And so in the end, our sexuality, purity, is not about just repressing our desires, acting like they're not there. It's about acknowledging their strength and their power and literally begging God for the strength to love as he loves. And if we do this, then our sexuality will no longer be something we hide from God. Rather, that he will shine through us onto the people that he loves, and the people that we love. And to me, this is the greatest form of evangelization on earth, to make the invisible love of God visible on earth by the way that men love women and the way that women love men. God bless you.